Let's move on to Mineral Ridge to close out the first half of the MVAC. Talk about the Rams, what they're bringing back. I know they lost quite a bit of their offensive firepower, but what kind of things should the Rams look forward to this season?
Well, Mineral Ridge, yeah, you talked about the offensive firepower that they did lose, but they are getting back 5 starters, and I think Mark Bunch is one of the key ones. That senior quarterback that they're going to be utilizing a lot in Mineral Ridge's offense. I think he's going to be the one guy to definitely watch, as well as Nathan Rohrman, the tight end, too, for the Rams as well. Big target, big blocker for them. Going into this season, they lost Randall Miller, wide receiver, Shakir Perkins, a running back, as well as Jalen Royal Eland, the wide receiver as well. So a couple of big losses on the offensive side of things, but I mean, I think Mark Bunch is the biggest key to that. Getting that quarterback back for his second season with the Rams is going to be huge. Bunch had a pretty good year last year. And I mean, honestly, the Rams overall last year started off or ended their season very strongly. We already know that opening game against Springfield was a blowout. Springfield ended up winning 45-6. But looking at that schedule from that, I mean, big games: win against Jackson Milton 45-0, win against Lowville 48-8. I mean, they started finding themselves later in that season against these really good teams and started putting it together. And I think you can start to find that a little bit more with Mineral Ridge. You're not going to get that, I think, early jet lag offense trying to figure it out, especially with the quarterback coming into a second season. I think Bunch is going to have this offense ready to go.
And a lot of coaches will tell you if you have to be young at one spot, and you'd rather be young at the skill positions than young at the quarterback. So they're returning a quarterback that has a year of varsity starts under his belt, got rhythm, as we said, towards the end of last season. And then, their defense probably isn't talked about as much as enough as it should be, because you hold Lowville and Jackson Milton to 6 and 8 points respectively. Those are two big high-flying offenses that proved they could score last year. Talk about Mineral Ridge's defense and what makes them so special and what we should expect from them this year.
Looking at Mineral Ridge's defense, I mean, last year averaged just over 20 points a game allowed, which is phenomenal defensively. The returning 4 starters, Mark Bunch plays both quarterback and defensive back. You also have Zach Stacy, defensive lineman, also Mason Miller, a linebacker, junior over there, that are going to be very dynamic, but they did lose a lot on defense. And Evan Erb, a linebacker, Austin Governor, a defensive back, Tristan Weiss, a defensive back, Shakir Perkins, a linebacker, Jalen Royal Eland was a defensive back, Randall Miller was a defensive back, Devon Winford was a linebacker. But out of these guys, I would say Ty Tamburo, senior linebacker, is going to be another guy too that's going to be huge for them this year. And you're going to look into those linebacker plays, and I'm going to be expecting play from not only Tamburo but guys like Mason Miller as well as Mark Bunch, doing it both ways on the offensive and defense. You're going to look to these 3 guys to be kind of your defensive captains, and you're that defensive gel, guys to kind of mold yourself after and look at as these are the 3 guys that we need to kind of play ourselves under. And to get better, you got to kind of look at some of the guys that are doing the best on the field. And I think these are the 3 guys that are going to have big seasons defensively for the Rams.
And Ridge is going to have to utilize their speed because they got that new turf field. They're going to have to use that speed because other teams are going to come in and they're going to be able to be a little bit faster on the turf. So Mineral Ridge has to be able to take advantage of the speed they do have on defense. And maybe that can be one of their strengths, the speed and quickness that their defense can bring.
I mean, absolutely, too. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see them playing on that new turf field as well and seeing how that's going to affect them, because it's going to have some effect. Maybe it's small, maybe it's big, but it's going to have some effect playing from natural grass to a turf field. So exciting to see what that's going to look like, too, first game.
I tell you what, Shakir Perkins is sitting somewhere in a dorm room going, what the heck? You got turf after I graduated?
Yeah, I know, right? And I mean, beautiful turf field too, and they're starting to pop up all over around the area, and it seems like that's the movement that every team's eventually going to go to.
Imagining Shakir Perkins on turf is just a scary thought. I think the whole MVAC is happy they waited a year and let him be on grass.
The speed of Perkins was definitely dynamic. So I mean, having him not be on turf was huge for a lot of teams in that Scarlet tier last year.
let's talk about the Rams schedule and what kind of things they have to look forward to.
For non-conference play, they open it up August 20th, home versus Pima-Tuming Valley. So Pie Valley to start, 27th at Lisbon, and then September 3rd, home versus Newton Falls. And I mean, that Newton Falls game, I think, is going to be a really fun game, honestly, to watch between the Rams and the Tigers.
And Pie Valley is a team that we don't hear a lot about in this area, but I'm telling you, they're a team that's always very good in that conference they play in. And I think they always feel like they don't get the credit they deserve. The conference they play in usually is really top heavy, a lot of teams that struggle, and they just feel like a lot that they don't get the respect they deserve. Definitely an opportunity to gain some coming into the MVAC Scarlet tier and trying to get a win against the Rams. So I think the Rams definitely have to buckle their chin strap for that week 1 matchup.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's part of that another tough non-conference schedule that a lot of teams in the MVAC are scheduling up for. Starting into conference play, it goes September 10th, home versus McDonald, 17th at Springfield, 24th at Western Reserve, October 1st, home versus Jackson Milton, 8th, home versus Sebring, 15th at Lowville, and 22nd, home versus Waterloo. And I mean, looking at all these games that they have set up in the way that they are in the schedule, I mean, I'm immediately looking at that back-to-back Springfield and Western Reserve matchup that they're going to have 2 away games for. Luckily, though, it looks like the Rams do have 6 home games on the docket this season.
Yeah, Coach Seidel is still contributing. We love you, Coach. Pie Valley is always huge, and he put huge in all caps. So, I mean.
Another one of those size schools, man. I mean, both depth and just general size. I mean, it's one of those schools, they come in and you go, whoa. You have to take a second and a double take at them when you see them.
The Lakers are from Pima-Tuming Valley.
Yeah.
We're always trying to get big teams that are always trying to get respect are dangerous.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's break down the conference and what the conference schedule for Mineral Ridge looks like.
Well, yeah, looking at that conference schedule, like I said, I mean, the 2 games that I'm looking at, that September 17th at Springfield, September 24th at Western Reserve, that's going to be big back-to-back games, and it's really going to show you kind of where you're going to be, I think, in the Scarlet tier and where you match up against some of the better teams, because immediately following that, you go home versus Jackson Mountain, home versus Sebring, at Lowville. So you go right back to 2 home games, and Jackson Milton right after Western Reserve and Springfield at home. I mean, you got the home field advantage, but still, that's going to be another tough game on the docket in a row. So it's right in the middle of the season, though, which is lucky for Mineral Ridge. They can kind of figure out who they are by the middle of the season.
I think Mineral Ridge, you got to look out for when you play Jackson Milton and Lowville, because both those teams are going to have the final score of that game last year pinned in the locker room all season, because I don't think either team feels like they put any part of their best foot forward in those games, and they want to kind of really wash it out of their memory banks, and they're going to have that score probably up in their locker room all year. So when they play those 2 teams, they better get ready for a very motivated squad on the other side.
Absolutely, and it's just the same way why I think Springfield should be prepared for the Rams on the other side of things going into September 17th as well. This is not the same Rams team that Springfield beat 45-6 week 1 all the way back in 2020. Like I said, big wins against teams such as Jackson Milton and Lowville, and blowout wins too, where Mineral Ridge really did put it all together. So they had some huge games following that big loss to Springfield last year, and if they could figure things out like they did against Jackson Milton and against Lowville, they can put up some points against Springfield. As we said, 40 plus against both those 2 teams. So if you can contend with Springfield offensively, you're halfway home to winning the battle.
All the way back in 2020. It feels like it's been forever, but really just a year.
Yeah, really just a year, but a long time in football sense, and a lot of games that have been played since week 1 of the 2020 season. So these are 2 completely different teams, both Springfield and Mineral Ridge, both in just the players that they returned and lost, but also stylistically and just experience-wise.
Different team, same color. We're all good with that. And by the way, Mineral Ridge's turf looks immaculate. I can't wait to see that pop up on YSN Live's broadcast.
Going to be absolutely gorgeous. Cannot wait for August 20th.
And you're going to be calling some games at Mineral Ridge, probably the Mooney games that they play there, but you're going to be very well acquainted with that turf field.
Yeah, and I mean, excited to really kind of see that turf field too. Like I said, going to have the honor of calling a few Mooney games this year that are going to be down there with the ever loving Jeff Bezos that is going to be along my side for those games. So that's going to be looks to be great broadcast for the docket so far. So excited to see though what the Rams stadium looks like. I haven't seen the finished product yet in person. I did see it when they were working on it earlier this year back in March. But I have yet to see the finished product, so I'm very excited to see what it looks like.
Ty and Betos, the tandem that never stops giving.